You might have seen this news on Square Enix, on Reddit, and other places a while ago. Some fans currently are in fear that an activist investor might build up enough force to destroy what Square Enix stands for. Is this really possible? And what is an activist investor anyway? These are two of the questions I would like to address in this video. But first of all, a quick self-introduction. Hi everybody, this is Dr. Todo speaking. I am a game industry consultant and analyst, primarily based in Singapore and Tokyo, with around 15 years of professional experience in the business. So you can say, well, I've been around the block for quite some time now, and you can follow me online under the links that I provided in the video description below. And if you have a minute later, please also feel free to visit my website, which you can find under serkantoto.com, where I cover certain topics, on the Japanese video game industry from time to time. So what happened exactly? In late April 2025, I posted this on X. Square Enix stock just jumped 16.15% on this news today. It's Wednesday afternoon in Japan. And on that day, what happened was that an activist investor called 3D Investment Partners disclosed they hold a quite significant minority stake in Square Enix, which is of course the studio behind iconic mega RPG franchises such as Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. And David Gibson, a fellow game industry analyst, with the original tweet right here, further specified that the stake amounted to, at that time, 5.47% in Square Enix, which may sound not like a big stake to some of you, but it's actually quite a lot for a publicly traded company of the size of Square Enix. And more on that stake later. So what is an activist investor anyway? So jumping to the website of 3D Investment Partners, one thing to begin with is that activist investing has nothing to do with political activism whatsoever. An activist investor is typically a financial institution, a hedge fund, for example, or comparable firm that builds up a stake in a publicly traded company in order to push that company later for often very significant changes, for example, to replace management positions or alter their strategy. Sometimes there are also individuals that try this, but these are usually exceptions. And activists do not need to disclose they're building up a stake while they do it, but they need to indicate their stake to authorities once the stake reaches a certain size. And this is what 3D Investment Partners did on that day. And what activists such as 3D say is that they want to unlock hidden value or serve shareholders with their investment. But of course, their ultimate goal and mandate by their own investors is making money. So they think that the target, in this case, Square Enix, keeps too much money in their books. They should change the way they do business, cut costs, and things of that nature to unlock that hidden value. And after a while, usually what happens is that the activist disappears into the sunset after selling their stake and after hopefully making a profit from their initial investment. Now, if we dig a little bit deeper into 3D Investment Partners, it's interesting that they are based out of Singapore, but they are led by a Japanese person called Kanya Hasegawa, who serves as the CEO and CIO, where CIO stands for Chief Investment Officer. And this is an interesting touch because this might lead to a bigger impact in the Japanese stock market in the case of Square Enix when compared to a situation where the activist investor is based in America, for instance. And 3D Investment Partners is a little bit famous in Japan because of their previous engagements in brands in that country. So you can see a couple of examples right here in this list. So Sapporo, for instance, which is famous for beer, and Toshiba. And I earlier said that this activist owns 5.47% stake in Square Enix, but this was actually just the initial investment. So what happened since late April and May 22 is that 3D Investment Partners actually raised their stake in Square Enix to 7.73%, which is really a big number, again, for a publicly traded company of the size of Square Enix, and it actually makes this activist the second biggest shareholder in Square Enix, trailing just one person, and that person is Fukushima-san, who is the founder of Enix, which merged with Square a couple of decades ago. So very, very big stake that 3D Investment Partners owns in Square Enix right here. So the main goal is always to boost the stock price, right? And as an example, 3D Investment Partners first publicly disclosed its stake in Fujisoft, which is a Japanese software company, in early 2022, which is just right around here. They're based out of Tokyo. And back then they said, look, we are owning just over 9% of the company. And after that, in the same year, they upped their stake in this particular company to 21% by December 2022. And what you can see here is the stock price of Fujisoft over the last couple of years. And you can see after Fujisoft was invested in by 3D Investment Partners, their stock has risen quite handsomely over time. And in this case, I would say that 3D Investment Partners was successful with their strategy. This particular company was delisted just a couple of days ago, which is, why you see this rubbish here with minus 100% in value drop. And, this kind of like drop right here in the graphic. And, please disregard the numbers. But overall, 3D Investment Partners, I think, can call itself lucky with their engagement in Fujisoft in particular. And what happens usually is how they do this activist investing is they after building up the stake, they publicly share ideas, proposals, and certain suggestions that they make publicly to management to put pressure on the management. And what you can see here is a PDF. So I'm not going to go through all of these 52 slides right here, but here they published publicly a shareholder proposals presentation to maximize, as they say it, Fujisoft's corporate value. And just to pick out two main points here. So shareholder proposal 1 back around 1.5 years ago now is appointment of Stephen Givens as a corporate auditor, and shareholder proposal 2 is share buyback. Right. So in the case of the first proposal, they want a person that they deem more suitable as a corporate auditor, to get into Fujisoft back then. And the second proposal was that they tried to pressure Fujisoft back then to buy back their own shares in order to boost the stock price. So things like this happen all the time, right? So these activist investors, they publish, presentations like this, or they set up whole websites like this one, compoundfujisoft.com. It's still online, actually, even though, again, the company just got delisted a couple of days ago, where they share further information, and it's bilingual in the case of Fujisoft. And sometimes what these activist investors do is they appear on TV, they give interviews, and they hire PR agencies to drum up support for their cause. Now, in the case of Square Enix, 3D Investment Partners, as of the recording of this video, has remained quite silent so far. So they did say that they're going to propose a few things to management, but so far they didn't, set up a big website, or didn't appear on television or online somewhere and try to pressure Square Enix into certain activities publicly. So what's funny is that there's another activist investor that Square Enix has to deal with currently. And they actually posted this official PDF on the official Square Enix website just a couple of days ago as a reaction to that shareholder proposal. And to be more specific, so this is the name of that investor, Dalton Investments as a proxy, and they basically proposed to Square Enix to buy 10 million shares. So their own shares, to buy them back on the open market in order to boost the value of the stock that is out there at a total acquisition price of up to 60 billion yen, around $420 million at the time of this recording. So what Square Enix in the case of this investor has to do is they have to react somehow, right? And they did with by posting this PDF. and they are basically laying out, like the details here, and they explain it a little bit, what this would mean to the company, and then they say which we would view as an excessive level. And then in the end, long story short is Square Enix says, yeah, we listen to you. Look, this is how we argue about your proposal, but we are basically saying no. We are rejecting that proposal put forward by this particular activist investor. And what you can see here is the release schedule for Square Enix America. There's a couple of points that are not correct, such as Kingdom Hearts Missing Link still being in this list. They just canceled the game. Please disregard this. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, and to calm down some of the fans out there that are not too familiar with the world of finance, no, activists cannot dictate Square Enix's product strategy or product pipeline, at least not directly, and especially if they don't have support by other big shareholders, right? So 3D Investment Partners does have a big minority stake, as mentioned, but it's not big enough to go into the company and basically tell management what to do directly. And I think that if you look at 3D Investment Partners, history so far, and as far as I can see, this company has no experience in gaming whatsoever, right? So the chances of them making meaningful proposals to improve Square Enix's business is actually zero, in my opinion. And of course, this activist has a lot of resources, right? In theory, to buy expertise from outside. And then try to put together some proposals or like a report or something of that nature, and put that forward. But I think that even such a move would not make much sense, because activist investing, in my opinion, is really difficult in an industry like gaming, because we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about a form of art, right? So it's very, very difficult to get in a company like that, in a company like Square Enix, and basically tell people what to do, right? I think this is much, much easier for traditional companies like Sapporo, the beer maker, Fujisoft, or for Toshiba, for instance, right? And I think that it's correct what David says here in the tweet that I showed you earlier, right? I think that these activists, just like the other activists that I showed, activists like 3D Investment Partners are behind, or like after the cash that is sitting in Square Enix's books, and in this case, it's $1.7 billion. Right, and I think that future proposals of 3D Investment Partners are probably going to focus on this, and I think that Square Enix is likely going to have no choice but to engage with 3D investment partners in the future, because otherwise, other people, other shareholders, or the public, etc., they could accuse Square Enix of being arrogant, of being ignorant, not listening to people, or not being interested in shareholder value in the future, right? So this is something that you want to avoid as a company. And it's ultimately all about the stock price, right? And you can see here, Square Enix's stock price over the last 4 weeks, over the last month, and you can clearly see how it jumped from this level up to this level. It leveled off a little bit, in the last couple of days, but this is quite a big, significant jump, around 24% over the last month, as of the recording of this video. But I'm suspecting, and I'm not talking for 3D investment or partners or for Square Enix, but in my opinion, this is probably not enough for that activist. I think they won't run. They want to run this further, and I think they're also in this stock in Square Enix for the long run. And that's it for the Square Enix 3D investment partner situation. Thank you for listening, and I might do more videos like this in the future. Thank you.